Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn Maya, and I'm here today with a veritable cornucopia of a book haul, the last book haul of 2023. Before I start my book haul, I wanted to thank everyone who took the time to reach out to me and find out how I'm doing after my unfortunate slip and fall last week. It was pretty bad. And what happened was that, if any of you are new, welcome. And I did have a hard fall last week, and I fell on my knees, and my bowl of food went flying, and it broke, and there was cuts, and it wasn't pleasant. But I'm slowly healing. But what happened was, when this happened to me, it started sort of a snowballing where I don't know if all of you know this, but I suffer from an anxiety disorder, and specifically health anxiety. And right before when this happened, I am due to see a doctor for the first time, a new doctor, for my yearly checkup. And he's a man, and I usually see women, but my female doctor, who I'd been seeing for a long time, she had to go and leave Hawaii and take care of her parents. And but I was assured that this doctor is going to be good. But I had some trepidation going on about the blood test I had to take like a few days after my fall, and the results of that, and then seeing the new doctor. And it kind of, so when I fell, I started having a lot of health anxiety, and I couldn't sleep. I had insomnia. And if anybody suffers from an anxiety disorder, you might know that things can spiral really quickly into panic attacks. But luckily, doing better. Let me just say that I did have the blood test, and the night before the blood test, I started having a premonition that something was wrong, and I couldn't sleep. And I had the blood test, and I say unfortunately, the results came in fast, and I can see it on my computer right away. And though all the tests came out okay, there was one test that was off, and that spiraled me into health anxiety. So I was able to work through that panic and speak to someone who, I tend to catastrophize. You know, everything was right. I don't have diabetes. My heart, all my lipids are fine. But this one test, the blood test, was off. So of course, you know, I'm spiraling. What's wrong with me? What could be wrong? But I was able to calm myself down, and I learned this through the years. People who suffer from anxiety will understand. And I'm on a website that helps people, especially young people who suffer from health anxiety specifically, but all panic attacks and anxiety. Anyway, I want to thank everyone who reached out to me, because it calmed me down and made me think I have people out there who care about me. And that's so important when you're suffering from either a fall like I did, or anything, because we're all human and we suffer from things, right? Okay, so thank you all. And now on to the book haul. So I said that this was a very diverse book haul, and it might be the most diverse book haul that I've ever done in my 4 years of doing BookTube. And I have everything. I mean, nonfiction, fiction, classics, you name it, I have it. So let's go on to it. Let's get on to it. The first book I want to talk about is by Edith Wharton. And I read The Age of Innocence. And though I didn't love it, I did love her writing. And this is another book by her, which is Summer. And it's one of the few books that she wrote that wasn't about the city, but the country. So it's a brilliant evocation of a season in the life of a restless small-town girl, and it's one of only 2 country novels, who is best known for her insightful portrayals of urban high society, mostly in New York and Europe. So she's 18 years old. Charity Royale feels trapped in her existence in the decaying town of North Dormer, living alone in the stifling company of a much older guardian and under the shadow of a mysterious personal past. And this is a Barnes & Noble that I bought new recently. It's a little shiny, but it has a beautiful cover. So I'm excited to read another Edith Wharton, because I heard from other booktubers that her writing is exquisite. And I wasn't able to connect to The Age of Innocence as much, though I did appreciate her writing. Okay, on to the new releases. I was very lucky to find a bunch of new releases at my library, because I can't really afford to buy new releases on a regular basis. I rarely buy a new release book, and that's okay. You can be a booktuber and not buy new releases. But this one really caught my eye, and it's called Small Fry, and it's by Lisa Brennan-Jobs. So can you guess who she's the daughter of? Right, Steve Jobs. And this says in its blurb says, in its exquisitely rendered story of family, love, and identity, a stunningly beautiful study of parenting that just so happens to include the co-founder of Apple. So it seems that she was born on a farm and named in a field by her parents, Steve Jobs and Lisa Chris-Ann Brennan, who I think was an artist, in the rapidly changing Silicon Valley. And when she was young, her father was a mythical figure. Now, I don't think they were married, though. I think that's one thing I read in here, that she was, one thing that bothered her was her illegitimacy. So, though I don't think any child is really illegitimate. So when she was young, her father was a mythical who was rarely present in her life. As she grew older, her father took an interest in her, ushering her into a new world of mansions, vacations, and private schools. The attention was thrilling, but he could be cold, critical, and unpredictable, and he was known for that. So she decided, when she was having problems with her mother during teenage years, she decided to move in with her father, and hoping he'd become the parent that she always hoped for. But yeah, and one thing I liked what it said about this book is that it's Philip Lopat, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I read a few books that he wrote, and he says, as clear-eyed, amusing, honest, unsentimental, and sad as any memoir I've ever read in recent years. And that's what I really love in memoir, when it's unsentimental. And I write memoir too, and I try not to be unsentimental, and also the clear-eyed, which kind of means that you're able to look back at your past and not carry all that baggage along on the page. So I'm looking forward to reading Small Fry, and it's a really beautiful cover. It's almost like she's covered in flowers and greenery. So another thing about this new book is that she lives in Brooklyn, where I'm from. And the next new release, the author also lives in Brooklyn. So let's get to that one. And that's called A Lesbian Love Story, a memoir in archives by Amelia Possanza. And she moved to Brooklyn. Actually, they both moved to Brooklyn. I'm a native Brooklynite. But yeah, I was interested in this story because my daughter is a lesbian, and I wanted to share this book with her, and also as an ally. I wanted to learn more, and it's, from what I gather, it's stories in throughout history of lesbian love stories. And so when Amelia Possanza moved to Brooklyn to build a life of her own, she found herself surrounded by queer stories. She read them on landmark placards, overheard them on the pool deck when she joined the world's largest LBGTQ LGBTQ swim team and even watch them on TV in her cockroach-infested apartment. I hate when they say that about Brooklyn, but some apartments are cockroach-infested. These stories inspired her to seek out lesbians throughout history who could become her role models in romance and in life. And that sounds fascinating. So I think we're gonna learn about different love stories of lesbians throughout the ages, and that sounds interesting to me. Okay, so the next new release is a novel of suspense called Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. And I don't know if she might be also, these are all debut novels, which I really appreciate too. So at first I thought, this is kind of a large book for a suspense, and I didn't know if I was going to pick it up. But when I read the blurb, I said, oh yeah, this is for me. So a disaffected bookseller develops a dangerous obsession in this utterly unforgettable debut. Catherine Ryan Howard. Oh, that's who wrote the blurb. So Roach, her name is Roach, which kind of ties in with infested cockroaches with the last book. She'd rather be listening to her latest episode of her favorite true crime podcast than assisting the boring and predictable customers at her local branch of the bookstore Spines, where she's worked her entire life. A serious true crime junkie, Roach looks down her nose at the pumpkin spice latte drinker, casual fans who only became interested in the genre once it got trendy. And boy, is it trendy now. But when Laura, a pretty and charismatic children's bookseller, arrives to help rejuvenate the struggling bookstore's branch, Roach recognized in her an unexpected kindred spirit. Despite their common interest in true crime, Laura keeps her distance from Roach, resisting the other woman's overtures of friendship. Undeterred, Roach learns everything she can about her new colleague, eventually uncovering Laura's traumatic family history. When Roach realizes that she may have come across her own true crime story, interest swiftly blooms into a dangerous obsession. So it's a darkly funny, and I like that, suspense novel. Death of a Bookseller raises ethical questions about the fervor for true crime and how we handle stories that don't belong to us. I love that blurb. That's why I read it all. So Alice Slater, and I think, all these library books, they give us 3 weeks to read them, and I think if they're not wanted by anybody else, they'll give us another 3 weeks. And I have to apologize because it's getting dark here in Hawaii. I actually did this video before, talking slower, but there was nothing that was filmed, which is really so frustrating. But, life is frustrating. So then I have my cozies. Okay, cozy nonfiction. And this is Jacques Pepin. And if you've seen him in TV, he had a show, or he has a show. This is Cooking My Way, Recipes and Techniques for Economical Cooking. And I appreciate that. And not all of these recipes look French to me, but he has a lot of beautiful photographs. And I like that. I think that's part of the pleasure of reading a recipe book, is that, and here's one, and that's a turkey. And yeah, so he has one, yellow rice with achote, which is sort of a Puerto Rican dish. So that's interesting. I just happened to turn to that page. I say, I want to read that one. And because it's an economical, I'm looking for economical because I try to eat healthy. And so it's hard to eat healthy when you're trying to do organic and do it economically. So this is a beautiful picture. So I call this cozy. When you have a picture like this in a cookbook, you got me already. And if it's going to have some French-inspired dishes, yeah. Red cabbage salad with garlic and anchovies. I don't like anchovies, but when you read a cookbook, you can make your own changes too. So I'm really, and this was also a new release, by the way. All of these are new releases, so that's cool. And another one is Stir Crazy. Of course, it's about wok cooking, and this is Ching-He Huang, and she has a lot of course, they're all wok fried, and a lot of them I can't eat because I don't eat seafood, but there's one with aubergine, fish fragrant chicken and aubergine. That looks good, and the wok looks good in this one. And 5-spice mock duck with seasonal greens. There's no picture on that one, but that's the one I want to try. So I think that cookbooks can be a really cozy thing to turn to when you're going through any kind of stress. And I like to just think about food and how I'm going to enjoy this, trying these recipes, and it takes my mind off of anything else that's bothering me. Okay, so what's the other book? What are the other books? So I think I told you I read in the last video, I talked about a book, Closing Time, by Lacey Fosberg, who passed away at a very early age, by the way. And I was fascinated because it was the true story of the Looking for Mr. Goodbar. In fact, it says it in the title, the true story of Looking for Mr. Goodbar. And I talked about how I really, that story meant a lot to me because I was living in New York at the time of that murder, when I think her name was Roseanne Quinn, the victim, and she was terribly mutilated and murdered in her apartment after going to a bar. And she was a teacher of the deaf by day. So it was fascinating to some people that this, that she could have led a double life. What I didn't like about Closing Time so much was that they concentrated on the killer. And I usually don't like books like that, but it was interesting to know more about him and, his motivations and, but not to feel sorry for him. But the thing was that the story, her parents, the victim's parents, wouldn't talk to Fosberg. So, but the killer's family did. So she was able to get a more complete picture of the killer than of the victim. But the victim's friends did talk to her, and she did get a different perspective than the Judith Rossner book, Looking for Mr. Goodbar, which is a novel. And Fosberg said that she was maybe using things that might have been said, so she was taking a little bit of liberty in that way, but basically it's a memoir. And Truman Capote, I think I just said that it was, and he wrote In Cold Blood, and he said it was a wonderful book, wonderful, true, exciting memoir, and I found it to be that way. So I went down a rabbit hole, and I decided that I was going to reread for Remember December, Looking for Mr. Goodbar, the original Judith Rossner book that I read in the 70s. And the Closing Time was also written in the 70s. So I want to compare the two and see which one if the one was more true nonfiction, and this one is fiction, which one came closer to the true story of that unfortunate, terrible murder. And so Looking for Mr. Goodbar is the story of the life and death of Terry Dunn, an attractive young school teacher, educated in parochial school, the kind of girl you don't notice very much, the kind of girl who seems to have everything under control. And also, she had polio when she was a child, so she was very, the victim was very, and she was very, very self-conscious about her limp. And she was a short, tiny girl, but she had a temper, and she she got mad at people. She had fights with people, and I want to see how closely the two books relate. So, talking about rabbit holes, so after I picked up this book, I said, what else did she write? And then I came across another Judith Rossner book, which is Emmeline. And she wrote this after Mr. Goodbar. And this is, if you can look at this, if you can see this, is the story. It looks like it was written, the time frame is 1839. And it's about the story of Emmeline Maya, who before her 14th birthday was sent from her home on a farm in Maine to support a family by working in a cotton mill in Massachusetts. And it's a love story, so I don't know if I get along too well if the emphasis is all on the love story, but this seems like she's a good writer, so I want to see what this is about. So that's what I talk about, going down rabbit holes. You look for one book and then you find some other books. And then recently I watched a PBS special about James Herriot's Way, which is a path in the Yorkshire Dales that people take. I think it's a 3-day trip, and tourists flock to this area because of James Herriot, who was a veterinarian and writer. And I got interested again in reading his books. And also there's a PBS special that might be starting again. I don't know if it's new or if it's the same PBS special of All Creatures Great and Small. But this tells the story. I read this many years ago, and it tells the story of James Herriot, who was a veterinarian, and he was sent from Glasgow to work in the Yorkshire Dales, I think it is, a beautiful area of England. And because I saw it in the PBS special. So 20 years ago, they published this memoir of an unknown Scottish veterinarian. And, you know, it's very hard to get a memoir published when you're an unknown anything. So I like that they used to do that, and they don't do that anymore. But then you find gems like this one. So within the year, the book has become recognized as a masterpiece, and the 2 decades that followed, he's become the universally loved author of all time, of our time. So so then, as we celebrate the publication of Every Living Thing, I think that was the 3rd book, and this was written in 1995. I think he's passed away since then. So they're reissuing this book that started it all. So his unique, richly justified love of life, his journeys across the Yorkshire Dales, his encounters with humans and dogs, cows and kittens, are illuminated by his infinite fascination and affection, and rendered with the infectious joy of a born storyteller. I remember loving this book. I love animals so much. So I'm hoping to read this again. If I can read all of these in 6 weeks. Then I went to, it was Nonfiction November last month. So I got a lot of recommendations. And one of the recommendations that came up on a lot of this self-help kind of thing was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And one thing I read this a long time ago. I think it was published in the 1930s, 1937, in fact. But one thing that I had read that I use to this day is that to use a person's name is very important, because when you use a person's name, you're acknowledging them. And when you acknowledge them, it makes them feel good. And that's what people really remember about you, that you're acknowledging them and making them feel good. That's what people really want from you, not to tell your story. But I remembered this, and I want to reread this to see if I can get anything else about, like, the first groundbreaking book of self-help and motivational books. So how can you make people like you instantly? I think that's where using the person's name comes in, remembering their names. So I don't know if that's like, it'll make them love you instantly, but I think it's really important to do that. So I agree with that. And how can you speak frankly to people without giving offense? You know, people don't get along now, to say it mildly. So to get along, that's always a good thing. How can you talk to people about politics in your family without making them offended? And should you be talking about it anyway? That's a story for another time. Then I went down a really old rabbit hole. I think I mentioned in one of my videos that I've been thinking about books that made me feel happy when I was very young. And one of those books I found and I sent for. You don't have to have a lot of money to be a booktuber. And when I first started being a booktuber almost 4 years ago, I spent a lot of money the first 2 years because I didn't realize that. And I thought I'd have to have new books to talk about all the time. But now I spend my money on books that I can't find anywhere else or something I want to keep. And the book that I recently sent away for, and I think it was $10, and I talked about it, is a book that meant a lot to me when I was 10 years old, To Build a Land by Sally Watson. And I'm going to show, when that comes, I'll show that to you. But another author that meant a lot to me was an author named Roseman de Jardine. And she wrote a lot of books. When I was about 11, 12, I was reading all of her young adult books, which were then called teenage books. And one was called Practically 17, and I still remember it. And I didn't realize that these were written in the 1940s. And here I was in the 1960s, and I still felt that they were timely at that time. I don't know how timely they will be right now, but I'm figuring that they might be pretty timely because people's emotions don't change really. And this Practically 17 is a Toby Hayden story, and she has a lot of series of different people. So Toby Hayden, an attractive, fun-loving teenage girl, here reveals her inmost thoughts about her family, herself, and her first boyfriend. So it says, in recent years, permanent recognition and popularity have been accorded the junior novel, the story that records truthfully the modern girl's dream of life and romance and her ways of adjusting to her school and family experiences. Okay, that doesn't sound very modern, but I guess it did in 1940. But I remember really, really loving this author. And her other book was another book that I found in my library was A Man from Marcy Roseman de Jardine. And this is, Marcy is left high and dry in high school when her steady date Steve departs for his freshman year at college. The boys in the senior class seem to her immature and hardly worth the trouble. Marcy and some friends in similar plight try to fill the emotional vacuum by forming the Widows Club. They pool their loneliness and keep the faith while they knit and gossip and speculate on the joy of reunion when their men come home on vacation. And I'm sure there's some kind of plot thickening that's going to happen after that. But I remember I must have been 12 or 13, and even the dress is so sophisticated to me at that time, and who knows where my mind was. But I just had the urge to read something that I read and loved as a tween, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm really beginning to appreciate by other booktubers how not rereading, but young adult can really be interesting even in our adult years, though some people don't think so. That's true. And then today, and I'm almost ashamed to, don't judge me, but thrift books, good outlet, by the way. I found this book on somebody's channel. It's called Born Evil, a real-life Hannibal Lector who spawned a 20-year spree of madness and murder. Homeless and living in his truck, 40-year-old Hayden Clark often drew stares in Bethesda, Maryland. This might be pulp, crime pulp. But when I was younger, I was very much interested in literary crime nonfiction, true stories. And I remember a few that I could recommend. One was by Tommy Thompson, of course, Truman Capote with In Cold Blood, and Tommy Thompson with Serpentine. And Tommy Thompson also wrote a book about a doctor who killed his wife, though I can't remember of it, or it was a Texas socialite. And so I was into that at that time, but I kind of weaned myself off of that. But these are truly escapism. For some reason, when I was younger, I found that true crime got me out of my own head a lot. So I said, let's see if it still does that. And I sent away for this, and that's fine. At the end of the year, Booktube, I should say YouTube, sends like a report and how you did this year. And I gained 100 new subscribers, but I lost 100 subscribers. So that made me think, first of all, thank you, new subscribers. I appreciate you. And bye-bye, old subscribers. And I'm wondering if that meant that I was a different type of booktuber then, and now I'm maybe more comfortable in front of the camera. I don't know what that means. But I'm just glad that I'm still here and that people still watch my channel, even if the views aren't as large as some other channels. You can't compare yourself. Everyone is different. And I noticed that a lot of, like big booktubers, I don't watch them as much because I find that I actually learn more about booktube from smaller booktubers. I don't know, but whoever watches me, I appreciate you. So thank you very much. And I noticed that if I say, please subscribe to my channel, but pressing the notification bell and liking and commenting, but gets that channel on your feed. And I noticed that if I don't press the notification bell from some of my friends that I watch, the booktuber friends I watch, they won't come up in my feed, and then I'll have to search them out, which takes time. So if you want to hear more from me, please press the notification bell. I just did that with a bunch of people that I've missed their Vlogmas videos. So we just had Hanukkah here, and in my house, and in the world. And it was a rough Hanukkah for me because of the fall and the pain and the stress and the panic, and But what's good about BookTube? What's good about BookTube, and it's getting dark now, so I'm going to have to. That's why I've been hurrying this video. But what's good about it is that it's a place that people from all abilities can be accepted. Whether you're old, you're young, whether you have chronic pain like I do, or any other kind of ability, different abilities, you can be welcome. Age, sex, whatever, you can be welcome by most people in some corner of BookTube. You will have an audience. So for all the people that have commented on any part of my life or my books, I thank you so much, and I wish you a wonderful new year and joy, happiness, and most of all, aloha.